There's a specific version of this that the vocabulary doesn't quite cover. You know what anxious attachment is. You know what avoidant looks like. You've probably read the articles, recognized the dynamic, maybe even named it out loud to a friend. And still, you can see it early, sometimes almost immediately, and you stay anyway. Or you leave and find the same person wearing a different face. And underneath all the explaining and the pattern recognizing, there's a question that's harder to say out loud than any of the others. Not, why do I keep choosing this? The deeper one. Why does this feel like the real thing every single time? Why does the person who keeps you slightly off balance feel more alive than the person who is simply straightforwardly there? This video is about that question, not the name of the pattern. You probably already have that. What this video is about is the mechanism underneath it. The specific reason your nervous system experiences avoidant chemistry as chemistry, and why that has nothing to do with what you actually want. So let's begin by looking at what this pull actually feels like, from the inside, where it lives. Here is what almost no explanation of this dynamic actually describes. It's not that avoidant partners are more attractive on paper. It's not that you don't notice the inconsistency, or the distance, or the way they seem to have one foot out the door, even when they're standing in the room with you. You notice. What the explanation always leaves out is what that inconsistency produces in the body. Because when someone is consistently warm, consistently present, consistently available, there's a particular quality to that experience. And for a lot of people with anxious attachment, that quality feels almost too quiet, too even. Like a song with no tension in it. The available person texts back quickly and it feels fine. The avoidant person texts back after 3 days of silence and something in your chest lifts. And you have probably looked at that response in yourself and felt something close to shame about it. Like you are somehow wired for suffering. Like you specifically prefer what hurts. That is not what's happening. What's happening is more specific than that, and understanding the specificity is the part that actually matters. When the avoidant person finally responds, finally leans in, finally shows warmth after a stretch of distance, your nervous system doesn't just feel relieved. It feels rewarded, and the reward is not the same as the quiet satisfaction of someone who is always there. It is louder. It is chemical. It feels like confirmation of something. Research on intermittent reinforcement shows that unpredictable rewards produce stronger neurological responses than consistent ones. This is not a flaw in how human brains work. It is exactly how they were designed to work. The variable reward, the message that comes sometimes, the warmth that appears and then retreats, activates the dopamine system more intensely than the steady, reliable thing. What that means, in practice, is that your nervous system is not confused. It is doing exactly what it learned to do. The question is what it learned and where, which brings us to the mechanism itself, why your nervous system chooses this in the first place. The part that most explanations of anxious avoidant dynamics skip is this. The nervous system doesn't come to adulthood with a blank preference. It comes with a calibration. And that calibration was set early, before you had language for it, before you could have chosen it. In the years when the people who were supposed to be consistently there for you were something more complicated than that. Not necessarily absent, not necessarily cruel, maybe just inconsistent, warm sometimes and withdrawn other times, with no pattern you could predict. Present in the room, but somewhere else behind their eyes. Close enough to attach to, far enough that you are always, in some part of yourself, working to close the distance. What a nervous system learns in that environment is specific. It learns that love comes with distance in it. That connection requires effort to maintain, that the quiet moments, the moments without pursuit, are not rest. They are waiting. And here is the part that changes everything. If you let it land, when a secure, available person shows up and simply stays, no distance, no inconsistency, no gap to close, your nervous system doesn't experience that as safety. It experiences it as the absence of the signal it recognizes as love. The flatness you feel with available people is not indifference. It is your nervous system looking for the frequency it was calibrated to receive and not finding it, which it then translates as, "This doesn't feel real." Attachment researchers have traced this pattern consistently across decades of study. The nervous system that learned love through inconsistency doesn't just tolerate anxious dynamics. It recognizes them. They feel familiar in the body. And familiarity, to a nervous system, reads as safety, even when the mind knows otherwise. This is not a character flaw. This is calibration. And calibration is not the same thing as preference. Now here's the part that nobody names. The layer underneath the mechanism that makes this pattern genuinely hard to interrupt, even once you understand it. The avoidant partner, despite everything they can't give you, and sometimes because of it, confirms something your nervous system already believes to be true about love. That love requires pursuit. That connection is something you maintain through effort, not something you simply have. That the moment you stop working for it, it disappears. And there is something in that confirmation that feels, at some deep level, like knowing where you stand. With the avoidant person, you always know the rules. You know that warmth is earned. You know what it costs. You know how to get it. You have a role. You have a task. You know how to be in the relationship with someone secure, someone who simply offers warmth without a cost attached. The rules disappear, and that should feel like freedom. But for a nervous system calibrated the way yours has been, it can feel like standing in a room with no walls, like the floor might not hold. This is what the pattern is actually protecting you from. Not from love, not from connection, from the specific terror of intimacy without a known cost, of being loved without a task attached to maintaining it, of softness that doesn't have a withdrawal scheduled somewhere behind it. The pursuit of the avoidant person is not self-destruction. It is a very old, very loyal form of self-protection, running in a context that no longer requires it. And here is the moment where what you learned and who you are have to be separated, because they have been collapsed together for long enough. The nervous system that finds flatness in availability and electricity in distance learned that response. It did not arrive with it. It built it, carefully, logically, from the evidence it had at the time. That evidence is decades old. The chemistry you feel with avoidant partners is not a signal that you're broken. It is the sound of a protection system doing its job. Just a very old version of its job, in a world that has changed more than it has. This is what you learned, not who you are. That distinction is not small. It is the only place the pattern can actually be interrupted. If this video opens something you want to look at more specifically, not in the general version but in your history, there's a resource in the description built exactly for that. It's a structured workbook called the Love History Audit. 8 exercises across 4 sessions designed to map your specific pattern across your relationship history, not to assign blame, but to find the exact shape of what keeps repeating. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. So now the question becomes, where can this pattern actually be interrupted? You probably know on some level what the logical version of the advice is here. Choose available people. Notice the pull toward unavailability and question it. Give the boring person a second date, and if that knowledge had been enough, you wouldn't be here. So this is not going to be that. What actually reaches the part of the nervous system running this pattern is not more instruction. It is different experience, specifically accumulated experience of intimacy that doesn't withdraw, of warmth that has no cost attached, of staying when you expected someone to leave. That accumulation is slow. It does not happen by deciding to feel differently. It happens in increments, in moments, in the slow recalibration of a system that was built through repetition and can only be rebuilt the same way. But there is one thing that can begin before the accumulation. It is not a technique. It is a practice of noticing, specifically, noticing the exact moment before you follow the pull. Not to stop it. Not yet. Just to locate it. The exact moment the avoidant person goes quiet and something in your chest shifts into pursuit mode. The exact moment someone available says something warm and you feel the subtle deflation, the sense that the stakes just lowered. Those moments are where the pattern lives. And naming them, even silently, even without acting differently, is the beginning of having a choice about them. Research on nervous system change is consistent on this point. Awareness of the activation in the moment of the activation is the precondition for everything else. Not awareness the next day, in reflection, in the moment, before your brain catches up. That is where the interruption becomes possible, not by overriding the nervous system's response, but by being present enough to notice it as a response, rather than as reality. The avoidant person going quiet is not evidence that you need to pursue. The available person being warm is not evidence that the stakes aren't real. Those are interpretations. Old ones. And old interpretations, once you can see them forming, can be questioned. That is not a fast process, and it would be dishonest to suggest otherwise. But it is a real one, and the entry point is smaller than it sounds. One moment of noticing, the next time the pull appears, before you follow it. Not to make a different choice. Not yet. just to know that there was a moment where a choice existed. That is where it starts. If you want to take what this video opened into your specific history, to find where the pattern actually started, in the relationships that shaped the calibration, the workbook in the description is built for exactly that. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. When was the first time you noticed that the people who felt too easy made you less interested? And what did you make of that at the time? What you walked into this video believing, even if you didn't put it in these words, is that the pull toward unavailability is a preference, something in you that specifically wants what withholds, evidence of a taste for suffering, or a pattern so deep it has become identity. What the evidence actually shows is something different. The pull is a calibration, built from real experience, in real conditions, by a nervous system that was doing the most intelligent thing it could do with the information it had. It learned that love has distance in it. That connection requires pursuit. That warmth that arrives without cost is probably not real warmth, or probably won't last, and it has been applying that knowledge ever since. Loyally. Consistently. To every new face, in every new city, on every new app. A preference cannot be argued with. You cannot reason yourself out of liking what you like. But a calibration, a learned set of signals that the nervous system was taught to read as real, that is something different. Calibrations were built through experience, and they can be rebuilt the same way. Not quickly. Not by deciding to. Not by forcing yourself to feel something you don't feel yet, but through the accumulation of moments where the prediction was wrong. Where someone stayed when you expected them to go. Where warmth arrived without a cost attached, and the floor held anyway. That accumulation takes time. And it takes starting, which is its own kind of hard. But the pattern you have been living is not a verdict about who you are capable of loving, or who is capable of loving you. It is the record of what you learned about love before you were old enough to choose what to learn. And a record, unlike a verdict, is not the end of the story. It is just the part that was written first.